Hi, guys. Welcome to episode 14 of season 5 here on the Simple Doesn't Mean Easy podcast. Today, we're talking about something that doesn't seem like it would be inherently important to your health, but it turns out it is so important. It is literally the fuel that our brain runs on. We are talking about joy. The co-author of The 4 Habits of Joy-Filled Life, no, people, The 4 Habits of Joy-Filled People, is joining me, Chris Coursey. And I loved this conversation. I have read through the book, and yet he still enlightened me on some things I somehow missed or aren't there. And the book itself, it's just so encouraging and offers so much insight into this simple little thing that can be so elusive sometimes of joy. Chris Coursey is an ordained minister, a pastoral counsel, a published author, and an international speaker. He and his wife, Jen, led and designed the Thrive training program that uses brain-based exercises to train leaders, families, and communities in the 19 relational skills and the Emmanuel lifestyle. Chris is passionate about helping people acquire the skills to make relationships work. And today he is diving into the health aspects of joy and how our health is impacted when we don't have joy, and how we don't only need joy, we also need rest, why we crave joy, the fact that there are actually periods of joy growth, like there are growth spurts in our lifespan. There are periods of extra growth or ability to grow joy at certain ages, and so much more. It's a good episode. It really talked to me and reminded me of how I need more joy in my life. Well, Chris, I'm so glad that you could be here and chat about this really important topic with me today. Thank you for making the time to do that.
Hey, Michelle, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, this season is all about the simple steps towards improving our health. And when I came across, I got a little sight of your book that you've written with your co-authors, Marcus Warner.
Yep.
I instantly knew this would fit so perfectly in this season. Now, a lot of other things we're talking about are more like hands-on health related, but
Yep.
this is a different thing that I think is so important that I don't know if people often think about.
Yeah.
I mean, right in the beginning, in the introduction, you and Marcus talk about how a lot of people don't think it's necessary. Like joy is kind of the icing on the cake to most people, right?
Right. That's right. Joy is, that's a message we try to just kind of shout from the rooftops, in a sense that like your brain runs on the fuel of joy. And yeah, we do kind of tend to think about joy as, well, that's the icing on the cake. And yeah, if I can have a little bit of joy, but otherwise it just, no, we're like, no, like the brain runs on joy. And
Mm,
joy does so many things for our life, for our health, for our relationships. So that's really
yeah.
why we wanted to write this book. We're pretty passionate guys about joy and mental, emotional, spiritual health and
Yeah,
physical health. And just, we feel like this is a message that needs to get out there.
absolutely. And okay, the subtitle is 15-minute brain science hacks to a more connected and satisfying life. What is that all about? You're promising a lot there. Tell me what that means.
Yeah, I know it is. It is. And we kind of live in this world like a fast food world.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a little bit different than that. So the point with the 15-minute brain science hacks is really that a little bit of joy goes a long way. And so even, finding families and people that even just can devote 15 minutes a day to actually doing something purposeful to train your brain, train your nervous system to grow some joy. A little bit goes a long way. And one of the reasons for this is because joy is contagious. And so
Mm,
when you start, doing something that sparks some joy, what happens is next thing you know, other people are smiling, you're smiling, and you're noticing, wow, I'm really glad we did this. And so in the
mm-hmm.
book, there's exercises that we created to really help people practically do something to build some joy. And I can remember years ago, my wife and I were practicing some of the variations of these exercises that's in the book. And um, we took a month and we did 10-15 minutes a day, doing some joy exercises. And that month, Michelle, was probably the best month in our marriage. And
Wow.
when we were doing this, we're like, why don't we do this all the time? Like, they're so simple. The exercises
Hmm.
are so practical. They're
Hmm.
almost too easy, and people just look at the exercises. They're like, really? Like, there's only 4 steps and, 10-15 minutes. Like, just try it, because you can read about joy, talk about joy, think about joy, but ultimately you have to do something to practice joy, just like learning a musical instrument or learning a new
Yes.
sport or a new language. We need some practice. And so
Yeah.
the 15-minute exercises are just, it's a chance for people to interact experientially, practice some joy, connect, and yeah, and just notice what happens. I always tell people the proof is in the pudding. Like, don't take my word for it. Like, try it yourself, and then you decide whether or not anything changes, and
Yeah.
that's really what happens with the exercises. They're almost too simple. But yet it surprises us how they sneak up on us like, wow, there was something there. I wasn't expecting that. And
Yeah.
we're just accessing just joy, like how the brain just really processes joy and shares joy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you have a whole chapter filled with these exercises, right?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
There's 4 habits. And so each of the habit chapters have some practices to try to put into practice some of what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. I have shared here on a previous episode. Goodness, I don't even know if it was what season it was in, but I shared with my listeners how a long time ago when I was really struggling with negative attitude. I mean, it's just, I don't
Yeah.
know if you would agree with me. I could be wrong, but I feel like in some people, it's kind of an inherent battle,
Yeah.
maybe based on upbringing. And you talk about that in the book.
Yeah.
Um, and there was a time period that I thought I was doing it for my daughters because I wanted to help them not be so much like mom. But in the end, I learned so much. And all that I did was for 1 week, I tried very cautiously whenever I caught myself with a negative attitude, I would tell my daughters, I'd share it with them, and they had to do the same thing with me, that I was going to make this a 4-8 attitude. We memorized Philippians 4:8, and everything that we tried to take it captive, everything negative, and we tried to say, okay, well, what is good or lovely or pure or noble or right about this thing that I'm being so negative about, And the reason I'm sharing this is because so many times as I was reading through your book, I thought, yes, I experienced that back that week when I really started to make my brain work and I started to exercise my brain like that. So there's a lot of good truth in what you're saying, and I've experienced it myself.
I mean, you nailed it. Philip, like this is a very like scripture tells us to like think about, reflect on the good stuff, and ultimately, like that is what we're accessing here. Just
Yeah.
the brain, was designed to run on this fuel, and I love your example of even sharing it and inviting your daughters to join in. Like that's awesome. Like that's really what we hope people will do with the book. Like just practice
Yeah.
exercise, just share it with other people.
And that's a
And
great point. I mean,
yeah,
this could be part of a homeschool curriculum. I tried to do it as our lessons
oh
that
yeah,
week in homeschool, and you could definitely do the same thing with your book for
that's
sure.
yeah.
I
I mean,
love it.
and families, are ideally, families are meant to be the most joyful places where we can, like, right? It doesn't always feel that way.
No, it doesn't.
And
Yeah.
I find we have 2 sons, 11 and 13, and we try and do this as a family. We have to mix it up because sometimes they'll roll their eyes when I say,
Oh,
okay,
of course.
let's do a little, joy exercise. They're
Yeah.
like, oh, dad wants to do the exercise again. So I have to
Yeah.
mix it up a little bit at this stage, but it's fun to even see the difference in them, when we
Yes.
do it. You could, moments we've lost our joy, we do something to kind of bring some joy back. It's fun to see the difference in the whole family and in them.
Absolutely. And
Just
you know what, Chris? I pretty much can guarantee you that when those, you said they're boys, right? Both boys
yeah.
are adults. I have 4 girls, so I wanted to make sure I didn't
Oh,
want to get it wrong.
oh,
When
sweet.
they're adults, at some point, they're going to call you out and tell you, Dad, what about that joy exercise?
Yeah, that's
Because
right.
to this day, once in a while, I get a little snide 4-8 attitude, mom, you know?
Oh, yeah, that's good. Oh yeah, they'll play that card. They'll play.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yep.
yeah. So, okay, before we go too much further, I want to pause for a second. I want to make sure that the listeners have a real handle on why joy is essential to our health. And then I'd like to get more into some of your practical tips and insights. So, in the book, you break down some very real examples of why joy is truly necessary for our health. You have, I think it's 5 different points you go into. Like, it gives us energy and hope. It helps us endure the hard stuff. And then you get into this point about a fear map. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So one of the points we make in the book, like your brain's going to run on one of two fuels. It's either going to run on joy, which is the ideal fuel, or it's going to run on fear. And so when joy is not part of the equation, then fear takes over. And fear is really about self-preservation. And so one of the things, that joy does, like if you watch an infant, experience glad to be together joy, where mom or dad or grandma or grandpa, somebody's face was lighting up to see them, they become energized. Their face changes. They'll kick their feet, wave their arms. Like those little bodies are like getting energized, basically, like a light, plugging in a light. And so what happens is the brain is seeing a glad to be together response, and it's taking that, making it bigger, and then it's like sending it out. So you receive it, you send it. So joy grows, it's amplified, it's fun. You can see this, right, in other people. With fear, what happens is your brain craves joy. Like ideally, we want joy. And when we don't have joy, then it hurts. Like pain and problems become big. And then it's ultimately self-preservation takes over. And it's like, how do I avoid pain? So it's pain avoidance, and fear mapping is basically where your brain has been trained to look for all the fears and all the threats. And so I've caught this as a parent with my kids. I want to pass on wisdom and I want to prepare them for life. But if I do it out of fear, I am like helping them recognize all the threats in the environment rather than helping them be who God created them to be. And there's a big difference. So I could scare them when I am, recognizing and verbalizing all the threats. Like, here's what you need to know. Here's the things you need to avoid. Here's the things that can cause you pain. And there's wisdom to that. Don't get me wrong. But it's like, how do we be the people that we're designed to be, where we're equipped to stay ourselves, even when things get hard, even when there's challenges and there's conflicts and there's just hard stuff that happens. Like, how do I stay my relational self? And so fear is, self-preservation. What do I need to be worried about here? What's going to hurt me? And they've done studies with children whose brains are fear mapped. So if they're in a classroom, for example, in a learning environment, a fear mapped child will notice the bee in the window, and instead of listening to the teacher and taking in what the teacher is trying to teach the student, they will watch the bee, and all their energy and their attention is on the bee. And so they're not getting any new information because their brain has identified a threat. Or maybe there's a bully in the group and they're keeping an eye on the bully. So fear, diminishes our joy. Fear it commands our attention and our resources. And so the good thing about joy is we can learn, what do I pay attention to here? And my brain's learning, how do I stay me? So I could still be aware of the threats, but it doesn't control me. My focus is on, how do I stay myself while I navigate this terrain, whatever that terrain is. And we can feel that difference. I can feel that moment when fear is present and there's something I'm worried about and I'm trying to help my children learn something, but I need to, okay, wait a minute. I've tripped and stumbled onto some fear here. You know what? I need to get my peace back and my joy back. I don't want to just scare my kids. I want to actually equip them to be the children that God created them to be. Relationally, relational, joyful, peaceful.
Yeah.
That's
you talk in the book about a child hurting themselves and coming to the mom, and how the mom, if she just slaps a Band-Aid on it, that's a problem too, right? Like, she has to acknowledge the fear or the pain, but then, work towards fixing it, not becoming with letting the child becoming trapped in that
Yeah.
feeling of fear. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking the kid watching the bee or worried about the bully or any of those things, all of that must be truly physically impacting their physical health, right?
It does. It does. The thing about fear is I was once having a conversation with the brain surgeon of all people about joy.
Mm.
And we were talking about how your brain, it's a skill to learn how to feel upsetting emotions and get back to joy. So this is a skill that children will learn often after the second year of life, during and after the second year of life. And so this means that I can feel the fear, but I know how to get back to joy. I can feel some shame and I can get back to joy so I can bounce back. And this brain surgeon said something very interesting. He said, Chris, if we're stuck in a negative emotion for 6 minutes or longer, we have cortisol streaming through our bloodstream for
Yes.
24 hours. So you've got the stress hormone,
Really?
24 hours go up
Wow.
in your blood and your saliva and so forth. And so and cortisol's good in small doses. It's good in
Right.
small doses, but it's not something you want leaking into your bloodstream for 24 hours. And so cortisol has a toxic effect on new brain growth. So what that
Mm.
means is you have had a wonderful, joyful day, great fun day, lots of glad to be togetherness. And right before bed, something scary happens, right? And you get really upset. You don't get back to joy, 6 minutes in this upsetting emotion. Well, what happens is cortisol is released, and cortisol will go and delete all that new joy growth that the child had that day. It just wipes it out. That's what
Wow.
cortisol does, and it messes with our immune system, all
Yeah.
kinds of really unhelpful things. So you're exactly right. Like
Wow.
when you look at how the brain runs and works, like we are meant for joy. We're meant to get back to joy when we lose our joy. And again, joy is we're glad to be together. And so it doesn't mean that, bad things still happen, hard stuff still happens, but what it means
Yeah.
is I'm not alone for someone's with me. So I am not alone in the hard stuff. And that is really a key to helping us to be able to navigate the hardship well. So joy is
Yeah.
actually really good for your health in lots of ways. It's good for your immune system. It is good for your brain. It is good for your relationships. It's good for lots of things.
But I had no idea about the cortisol. That's
Yeah.
crazy. We've actually
Yeah.
been talking a good bit about cortisol here on the
Okay.
podcast too, because I'm dealing with menopause, and cortisol is a thing that's a really big issue for someone in menopause because we have too much cortisol. So,
Yeah.
man, if I'm upset and anxious about life and
Yep.
I'm in menopause stage, my cortisol is probably even worse.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah. And so little things like appreciation, we call appreciation package joy. So appreciation is a skill when I remember joyful times. So when you take, a few minutes to remember times of joy, to share times of joy as a family, to reflect on times of joy from your week, from your day, from your month. So just the act of being able to remember it, feel it, and share it. What that does is that really helps your nervous system stay in your sweet spot. So it helps
Mm.
to there's good chemicals that flow with joy, like endorphins and oxytocin when we share it. And so, yeah, so you could almost like see it as counteracting cortisol when you're accessing and activating joy files and feeling it, right? You remember it, you feel it, you share it. And if you could do that, you're going to feel the difference. You're going to feel
Mhm.
that difference in your body, and good things are happening, even down to they've looked at even how just simply remembering joy and reflecting on the good stuff changes enzymes in your body, which can prevent inflammatory disease. So, I mean,
Yes.
down to that level, which is
Yes.
really profound that can even happen. So, things like a little bit of joy goes a long way in a very practical way.
Yes. And you know what? I am like one of those really weird people that actually sometimes reads the little footnotes to the
Um,
chapters.
oh,
And it
yeah.
was something that you had said in one of the chapters. Really, I thought I need to read that footnote. So I'm just going to like read this because this
Yeah.
blew my mind. Neurobiology tells us what we do with our minds can alter the molecules of our health.
Yes.
I don't know what this is. Telomeres are part of our DNA strands, which decrease with age and stress. The best predictors of how these strands are optimized comes down to what we do with our mind.
Amazing.
It's
Yeah.
crazy.
It is crazy. I mean, when you learn that, this is why we wanted to write this book, honestly. It's like
Mhm.
we want to share it. Like, this is amazing. And Marcus and I are both pastors, so we kind of
Yeah.
come at this, from a pastoral, role. And it's like we want to just we want to share this with the world. We feel like it's just
Yeah. And I mean, it's not like you're saying that we have to do cardio for 45 minutes every day or we'd have to do something really difficult or alter everything we're eating. Just a matter of doing these simple exercises to work on making our brain have more joy. And the way that it rewires our brain and makes the new connections, it's just mind boggling. So, I mean, it's not even like you're asking us to do something hard.
right. And that's the good news, because everybody
Yeah.
probably lives very busy, full lives, and we
Mhm.
we respect, we understand that, we do as well. And like, just drop in little practices where you're able to, on your own, with a
Yeah.
spouse, with family, with friends, like just dropping this in. I
Yeah.
travel a lot, so I make it a point, even in airports or on airplanes, I find myself, interacting with people and giving opportunities for some joy, or
Mm.
what's been good from your day? Because normally in airports, everybody's not feeling a whole lot of joy. It's
Yeah.
stressful. I mean, it's not a joyful, peaceful
Yeah.
environment. And when you start practicing this on a regular basis, you start doing it without even really having to work at it or think about it too much. And so that's the goal. We want this to feel natural so that people will practice these habits and these skills in their life and just spread it. Just
I love it.
spread it.
Let's pause for a second, guys, and talk about possibly the most important thing in your kitchen. Do you think often about your salt? You know, Salt really should be simple. You shouldn't have to think about it, honestly. It should not contain artificial additives, and it definitely should not contain unhealthy pollutants. Am I right? So take a minute this evening and look at where your salt comes from. I personally have only used Redmond salt for many years now, and I know exactly where it comes from. It comes from a mine in Utah that was formed by an ancient seabed. That's where it all comes from. I know the source. It has zero chance of any pollution. And you know what? That's pretty much how I like my salt. Thank you. I would prefer it without pollution. So use code SWEET SALT over at solelyrested.com/salt for 15% off whatever your heart desires over at Redmond. Grab the 10-pound bag of salt. Heck, grab my favorite thing to order, the 25-pound bag of salt. It makes me so happy when that is delivered in the mail because, guys, salt never goes bad. And Redmond real salt never has pollutants. And it is loaded with more than 60 trace minerals. So go check it out. Solelyrested.com/salt. And I even link to my absolute favorite things to grab whenever I'm ordering from Redmond at that link, solelyrested.com/salt, and use code SWEET SALT. And guys, extra bonus, great news. If you're ordering $30 or more, shipping's even free. So you're getting your 60 extra trace minerals and you're not even paying shipping for it. If you're ordering $30 or more, go check out solelyrested.com/salt and use code SWEET SALT. Oh, there's one other point about health that you had mentioned in the book, that it actually, when we practice joy, it actually helps us avoid addictions,
Yes.
right?
Yes, that's right. And that's a big one. That's a real big one. So what addictions are, it's kind of pseudo joy. So joy, high energy joy and low energy rest are two sides of the same coin. And so what helps us grow joy is when we can quiet together. And I often will tell, like parents, like when you have a newborn, in about 2-3 months is when the equipment is forming in the brain to start really amplifying joy. And so what happens in infants is,
Really?
yeah, so
2 or 3 months old. Okay.
yeah, they start to see clearly. And what happens is they can now amplify joy because they can see clearly, and the right hemisphere to right hemisphere starts interacting. So what this looks like is infants will start, they will see a joyful face and respond. In fact, 9 months, infants can build joy up to 8 hours a day. That's like the best window in the lifespan is at 9 months. So I always tell parents some of this stuff, and I'll say, when your infant looks away after building joy, just pause and let her look back. Don't force it, because she's quieting. Like, so children only handle so much joy, and they'll look away to break eye contact, which stops the right hemisphere to right hemisphere interactions. They'll look away, and that's a chance to catch their breath. And when they're ready for more joy, they will look back. And so what addictions do is it hijacks a system where a nervous system needs high energy joy, low energy rest. And it's just back and forth, back and forth. It's a little dance, right? So addictions are going to compensate when I don't have the high energy joy. I need something else to pick me up. So people will gravitate towards something to give them a rush. Or if I don't have the low energy resting and quieting and calming, then I need something to bring me down artificially. So what addictions do is it counterfeits this. I need a pick me up, or I need something to bring me down. But what your nervous system and your brain want, joy and rest. You want joyful connections. You want to be able to rest and quiet. And remove one of those ingredients, and it's going to be a lopsided teeter-totter, and it's not going to go well. So we kind of need both, and that's where addictions come in. Like, hey, I need something to just pick me up. I need a rush. I need, I'm feeling lonely. I need something to make me feel better. Well, really what we need is connection and joy and rest. But we don't always get that. And as children, we don't always get those ingredients. So we will gravitate toward that sugar, that drink, that something to try to make us feel better. And in studies with mice on, they'll drink sugar water, right? They have the choice between sugar water and regular water. Mice will choose, obviously, the sugar water because they like it, but they drink it to the point it starts to kill them, and they can no longer taste the sugar water anymore. You know what? They keep drinking it because of they remember how good it tasted. So they keep drinking the sugar water until it kills them. But they can't eat, even when they can't taste the sugar water anymore, they will keep drinking it because they remember how good it was. And that's a really powerful picture of addictions. Like,
you're not kidding.
I'm going after something that's going to make me feel better, and then I remember it, and now I'm hooked.
Yeah, it's doing nothing for me. It's only hurting me, but I'm still going to keep taking it in. Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty sobering, really. You start to
now. Did you say that it's 9 months was our ideal time in our whole lifespan?
Yeah, 9 months
to build joy.
The best window where your brain wants to build lots and lots of joy. And now we have joy peak moments of growth. So it's like 9 months, 2.5 years, 5 years, 7 years, 9 years, 11, 13. So you have these peak growths, but 9 months is the best window. So we always tell families and parents, like, try to protect that 9th month and do everything you can to build lots of joy with your little one, because the joy is just going to blossom during that window.
Wow, I've never heard that. So there's actually growth spurts of joy.
Yeah, where I'm the most receptive to growing joy and letting it change me the deepest during these windows. And we normally know the 13, 15 joy growths, because that's usually when we have our eye on somebody. There's somebody we might have a crush on, or there's someone that's during a joy growth when we start to, I got a little crush on someone over here. It's like your brain is going through a growth spurt for joy. And so it's helpful to know there are windows where it's helpful to learn some of these relational skills. It's easier, it's better. There's other windows where you can learn language better, right? Especially those are some of the earlier years. You can actually learn languages faster, and you can pick up sounds that you won't be able to do later in life. So like, we have these windows in the brain where it's helpful to understand the ideal windows. But thankfully, we also have brain plasticity, which means maybe I didn't have the joy that I needed, or the rest that I needed, or those skills that I needed growing up. The good news is I can still learn them later. So even now, I'm in my 40s. Thankfully, I could still learn some of those skills that my family, maybe they didn't have. So there's tension. So there are windows. It helps to know there are ideal windows, kind of like a farmer has an ideal window, when to plant, when to not plant, right? There's also, thankfully, your brain is able to learn new skills later in life.
Yes.
But
And
I do
that's what your
think
book is all about, honestly. I
that's it.
mean, you're teaching us how to do that.
Yeah, that's
Um, and I love this idea. I'm glad that you mentioned that teens are also going through joy spurts, because that, I think, can help a parent dealing with the teen years sometimes to
cool.
think, I want to keep pushing the joy as much as I can. And, I on the hard days dealing with teens, I would always tell myself to fall back on relationship more so than discipline,
Yes, that's
and
right.
I think that helps with the joy too.
It does. You're spot on. You're
Mm.
exactly right. And there's so many changes happening in the teenage brain, and one of the byproducts of the hormones and all the changes in the teenage brain is it gets hard to quiet. So the teenage
Um,
brain, it doesn't easily calm down and coast to quiet like I used to, maybe in another time, in other years. So it is helpful to just give lots of grace and to focus on the relationship. Like, you're exactly right.
mm.
That's gold.
So that also makes sense why that's the only time that they seem to want to talk was at midnight or later at
Yeah.
night
Oh
too.
yeah. Yep. That's it.
So
Late night
I
conversation
lost a lot of sleep, but that's that the talking was more important.
for you. Well, you got
Okay.
it right. You got it right.
So, can you give us an overview of the 4 habits that bring us this joy-filled life? You have this nice description. You refer to it as casa.
Yeah.
I probably,
Yeah.
I'm
Got it.
not good
Got
at.
it. It's
um,
casa, and casa is Spanish for house, and so
yeah.
when the book, we used kind of the image of a house. You can have a joy house or a fear house in your internal world. And so the 4 habits would be calming. The C in casa is just calming, how to be able to quiet myself, quiet my mind and my body. The A is appreciating. And so how to find joy in everyday life, how to, reflect on the times of joy, remember the joy. And then the S is storytelling. So here we're sharing our joy. We're sharing the joy with others and through stories, which is a very, good practice to do. And then the A is just attacking toxic thoughts. So sometimes there's thoughts that rob our joy, and being able to just notice when we start to, lose our joy because our thought life is starting to slip. Maybe I'm focused on worries. I'm focused on what I'm angry about. Whatever. I'm losing my joy in my thought life, and then just being able to pay attention to that and catch that. So it's calming, appreciating, storytelling, and attacking toxic.
I love it. And you go into a lot of detail on all 4 of those
Yeah.
topics. I like that you said appreciation is about giving yourself permission to enjoy the little things in life amidst the junk. And that's
Yeah.
really what this whole podcast is talking about often. So that was
Yeah,
a
I
great
love
way.
what you're doing. Yeah, I just
Oh,
love what you're doing. I think you're doing amazing things to grow joy and be able to have satisfaction. So
oh,
yeah,
well, thank you. I really hope so. And if I am, it's only because I myself am battling. It's a nonstop battle for me to keep
yeah,
focusing on the joy. So I hope so.
yeah,
And your co-author gave a really, I thought, a great description. I have never had a panic attack, but he gave a really great description of how he worked through
yeah.
over a year of horrible panic attacks daily, and then he describes how these 4 habits that you just went through are really what brought him back to like a normal life, a joy-filled life.
Yeah, that's right. And I can remember many times he wod call or reach out and say, "Hey, I'm really having a hard time. Like, what can I do?" And I would just walk him through, some of these
Mm,
practices that are in the book, and just really
yeah.
help him be able to quiet, calm, be able to practice some appreciation and storytelling, and noticing and attacking those toxic thoughts. And it was neat because going into it, when you struggle with fear and panic attacks, like, it's so big, it's so loud, it's so scary. Like,
Yeah.
trying to do anything else just feels so minor by comparison to just that battle.
Mm,
And so he went
mhm.
into it like, I don't know if I buy the stuff that Chris is selling here. I don't know if this is really going to help. But he would do it. He would practice this stuff, and he would start to notice, oh, I haven't I haven't had the reactions today that I've been having. Like, oh, I made it through this day with
Mm,
fewer, fear moments. And like, he would just start to see
mm.
over time how, joy was starting to grow in this garden, and the volume on the fear was getting turned down a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
and it deeply impacted him. So he became a big fan of a lot of the material we write about because he lived it and he
Yeah.
practiced it. And but in the beginning, it was like, why am I doing this? Like this
Yeah.
just feels so strange. I don't think it's going to help. But as he would do it, it actually would help.
And that's a great point because I was joking earlier about it's not even hard, but I mean, in some ways that's what makes it hard that you're like, that's not going to help.
Yeah,
So you
totally.
don't even try.
Oh yeah, totally.
So could you paint a picture for us of what kind of an impact long term this would have on us if we really work at these 4 steps that you walk through in the book?
Yes, I when I think about that question, I think about my wife and Jen. When I first met my wife, she struggled with anxiety and depression, and it was a good day if she got out of bed. Like, that
Mm,
was a good day. And we were friends. She was actually part of a community that was practicing these. I was practicing these skills just to see if they would work with Jim Wilder, my mentor, kind of overseeing. And so watching Jen practice these skills, and the calming one was a big one for her. She was a college student, straight A student, high functioning. Like her idea of resting was grading calculus papers while watching a movie. That was her idea of resting. So she collapsed, wore herself out to just collapse and then get up and do it all over again. And she started to learn some of these skills and practice these habits and these exercises. And it was really profound to watch the transformation in her. Like if you met her today, you would never know,
mm,
you know, as 11-year-old, she was hospitalized for suicidal depression. You would never know.
wow.
She's taught
Wow.
our boys these skills. She's downloaded these skills because she started practicing these skills thanks to brain plasticity and how God made the brain to work.
Mm,
It changed her life. And so
mm,
the nice thing about this is we all can use some practice. We all can use a little more joy in our cups, and we all would benefit from this, no matter where we are in life. We all benefit from this because this really is the fuel for your brain and your nervous system, and a
yeah.
little bit goes a long way. And that is kind of
Yes.
what I try to
I
preach.
think I think it was, you mentioned Dr. Wilder. I think it was his description in the book that if you can be appreciative for 5 consecutive minutes, and that caught my attention. Okay,
Yeah,
it really has to be five
yeah,
consecutive minutes, Michelle,
yeah.
2 to 3 times a day for 1 month, that
Yes.
it can literally change the chemistry of your brain.
Yeah, it basically resets your nervous system to run on joy and peace. So if I do have a lot of fear, anxiety, whatever it might be, like that practice a little bit, 2 to 3 times a day, 5 minutes, just trying to look at pictures on your phone or whatever it is, photo albums, whatever you can do to try to, remember, feel, and share the good stuff. It basically recalibrates your nervous system. It's like setting the temperature in a room at just the right temperature that's comfortable for you, that's ideal. That's what it does for your nervous system. And that
Mhm.
just spills into and leaks into all areas of life, work, play, family, whatever you do. Everything's going to be better when joy and peace is a major part of it.
And it keeps your cortisol levels down too.
And it keeps that cortisol down. That's right. We want to do that. We don't
Oh,
want.
Chris, this is great. I could actually go on and on because there's so much more in the book that we didn't even touch on. So I want to encourage people to check out the book, The 4 Habits of Joy-Filled People. Really, I highly recommend it. And you've created a free resource too. How can
Yeah.
people?
Yeah, so Marcus and I put together 28 days to joy. These are 28 day, like 5-minute exercises, 28 days that people can
Oh, I
do.
love it.
Yeah, it's really simple, and yet people that are doing it like, yeah, that was really helpful. So 28 days. The website is just number 4habits.org. So just number 4habits.org, and you
Great.
can, yeah, get the 28 days to joy, and yeah, we'll practice will
Perfect.
help.
Okay. So, Chris, people, where can they find you? Find out more information? Where can they go?
Yeah, so my wife and I run a ministry called Thrive Today, and we have a whole website with lots of great videos and resources. It's Thrive Today, all together. Thrivetoday.org is where people could learn more about what are these relational skills, and then 4 habits, just that number 4habits.org. You can find the free joy resource.
Awesome. So the number 4habits.org for the free resource. I am definitely going to go check that out like right now. And thrivetoday.org for all that you and your wife are doing. Very good stuff. I love it. Well, everybody go out and get yourself a copy and start lowering those cortisol levels, start remembering and feeling and sharing the joy.
Yes.
Thank,
Yes.
thank you so much, Chris Coursey. Thank you for taking the time to be with us, and thank you for writing this book.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for what you're doing. Just love what you're doing. Thank you for having me.
Okay, guys, I hope that that inspired you, how amazing the brain is, and how we can do such simple things to really improve the quality of joy in our lives and those that we love. Thanks for listening. I would love to hear your thoughts about this podcast or this season or this very episode. If you loved hanging out with us, I mean, wasn't Chris great? Please, it would mean so much if you take a quick second and leave a 5-star review. It's the number one way that you can help us encourage more people. And that's the reason that I'm here. If you're not sure how to leave a review, it's simple. Just go over to soulyrested.com/podcast. And I have outlined the very specific details there for you. So it's super easy. And I will be watching for your review. Thank you so much. And remember, guys, it's easy to forget how blessed we are to live this life. So enjoy the simple, everyday efforts. It's not easy, but it will give you more joy. And it's a good life.